This meeting is being recorded. Hello everyone, welcome to EduTap. So recently NABARD Grade A 2021 result has been out and we have one achiever with us today, Mr. Puneet. Hi sir, welcome to EduTap.
Hello, ma'am. Hi. Good evening.
Good evening. So how does it feel that finally you made it to the institution you wanted to go?
I think a sigh of relief, much more than excitement. It's the fact that you are out of that cycle of appearing, going to end scale, and then maybe left out. I think it's end of that cycle, which is more of a relief.
True. Yeah. So, see, what we are going to do today, we are going to discuss all the strategies which Mr. Puneet followed for the examination. So, this was his third attempt. So, and in this particular attempt, the syllabus, the pattern was also changed. So, we are going to understand everything that how he managed that in this particular session today. So, sir, we'll start with your educational background. That what did you do, and then how you shifted your focus towards this NABARD organization.
Okay, so I'm an engineer. I'm a civil engineer. I graduated in 2015, and post that I did my MBA in human resources. And since 2017, that's after my MBA, I've been working for close to 5 years now. Uh, First attempt I gave in 2019, could not clear the prelims exam. And then in last attempt I applied for the interview, but could not make it to the final list. And this was my third attempt where I made it.
Right. So for the last two attempt, you, as you said that in first attempt you could not even clear the pre. So you must have you have must done all the preparation according to that only, right? And then for the next phase also you prepared well and you went to the interview. So even before the notification, as the aspirants they keep on studying even before the notification. So you must be preparing like that only, like the previous pattern. And then when this time notification came and there was just change in the pattern, so what was your reaction first of all, and then then how did you change your strategy?
So yeah, from last two attempts, the first two attempts, the syllabus was pretty much the same. They used to, QRE was one section, then they used to be a ESI ARD.
True.
And in this attempt, I think they made QRE, which was qualifying in nature, and marks would be counted only for ESI and
G
ARD.
and GS.
So
Yeah.
I think it didn't change much for me for the fact that being an engineer, I appeared in CAT as well, and QRE was never a problem to me.
True.
And the fact that QRE would not count in the final score, I think it disturbs you for a while for the fact that maybe you have that added advantage
Yeah.
in QRE and where you can score well. And even if you're lacking somewhere in ASI and ARD, and you can still make it to the next round. But I think as QRE was made qualifying, I think it was a good move in a sense that it made the paper very even for everybody. I mean, people who come from non-engineering background or any other background. So that ways it was a balancing act, I would say. But didn't change much for me for the fact that QRE was never a problem. And
Yeah.
now, even if I had to spare, say, half an hour every day for QRE, I think that was also not required. So
True.
everything you can devote your time for ESI and ARD, and the fact that the syllabus was changed for the main stage, second stage as well. I think that kind of worked in my favor because I'm good with writing. So the moment subjective was introduced, I thought, on back of my mind, I thought that I think this is a good chance
Right.
because last time I scored 63 around in objective. Had it been 65, I would have made to the final list. But this
Right.
time, I reckon with 15 objective, 15 subjective, I knew I always had a great chance. So it
Right.
didn't change much for me. I was always comfortable with the subjective section.
Right. So, sir, in phase one, as you said that QRE, it is it you are a strong hold in it. So, did you used to do mock test only, or just you went through the important topics just before the examination?
If you frankly ask me, I didn't touch QRE before examination. Not that
Right.
I was too confident in it, but the fact that your marks would not even be counted, I think it was completely off my mind.
Right.
So never appeared for any QRE mock as such. But I think people who don't come from engineering background or haven't appeared in similar exams in the past, I think they should make a point to at least devote some time for QRE so that they do not lack in this section because this can be make or break for some
Right.
candidate, and this should not be ignored at all.
Right. So for the qualifying section, we had two more subjects also. One is computer, and the second one was decision making, which was added for the first time in this particular cycle. So how did you prepare for these two subjects?
So decision making, I think one because the subject was very vague. I mean, the subject itself, how it was defined in the notification, was pretty vague. So what I did was I simply googled model of decision making, and then there were 4 or 5 different models of decision making. You just go through them, see some examples of each, so that if you have similar questions, then you can crack it. And the fact that it was also qualifying should not worry. I mean, it should not be a worry for most of the candidates, because even if you do basics of it, I think getting 4 or 5 questions out of 10 should never be a difficult task if you just go through the basic models of decision making.
So for decision making, what kind of questions were there in examination? Were they the theory based, which are like which whoever person has given some theory about it, or were they more of the application based?
I think they were more on the application based. And there were particular theories asked in a way that say this is the situation, this is how this should be solved, which model of decision making or which method of decision making is applied here. So in that ways, it was application based. Then I think there wasn't even a single question on who is given this theory of decision making for a change, but it might come up. I mean, NABARD is used to asking these questions, so it
Right.
might come up in future. So should not be ignored, but at least this time there was none. And
All
there were
right.
other questions where it was directly, I mean, this is the situation, what would you do? So more of very practical in nature, and I think it should not be a problem to at least qualify this.
All right. And so what about computer section?
Computer, again, I mean, very basic, and again, fact being it is qualifying in nature. Even if you have read computer till 10th, which most of us do as a compulsory subject, or even till 8th, or a basic module, I think there are a plethora of platforms where simple 20-page summary or something is mentioned.
Right.
You can pick one of them and just go through it once. And I think you should be able to crack 7, 8 questions, and that should help you qualify this section.
Right. So for this qualifying section, you just had an overview of all the subjects because that was just qualifying in nature. And now, if we talk about the merit based, which was ESI, ARD, and GA. So, what were the sources did you prefer, and what strategy did you follow? Because there is a lot of data that you have to remember. There's so much of static portion. So, how did you manage with that?
I think when you have to remember a lot of data, it's not that you remember it by heart. And first thing first, stick to one source, and you can pick any source. There are many available on internet. Some of them even available for free. So I think that should not be a challenge. One, for every topic, you should stick to one section. I mean, one source.
Right.
And then do it again and again. In the first attempt, maybe you'll just remember 20 to 30% of what you've read. If you do it again, I mean, that number goes up to 50% or maybe 60%. You do it 3 times, and then you're secured for the examination, because if you remember 70% of it, then that photographic memory works in your favor. If you see 4 options, and then you'll realize, oh, this is one option I've read somewhere, and then you end up clicking it. And 65% is the benchmark I think everybody should take. And if somebody is scoring 65%, I think he's through, at least in the prelim stage.
Right. So, what were the forces did you follow for these subjects?
So for ESI, I mean, I was always comfortable with ESI static because economics is something I've read at depth, so that was not a problem. For other, I think any source to say any freely available source, any
Right.
module, monthly module you can pick, because
Right.
this is very data heavy. I mean, they'll ask you, say, IMF would say India will grow by 4.5%, and World Bank will say it will grow by
Some different
5%.
data. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think they're very particular about, and these questions are always asked. So maybe with subjective portion added in the mains, the weightage goes down a bit. But again, you'll have to first qualify prelims, and prelims is also always data heavy.
Right.
And I think you have to remember that data and pick any source, but do it again and again. I mean, that's my advice.
Yeah. And maybe because you have given it priorly twice, so you must have idea that what kind of questions are asked, and that's what have helped you in remembering what sort of information you need to remember for examination.
Correct. So when I applied for the first time in 2019, I mean that was the time I even cleared the UPSC prelims that year.
All right.
But and I was confident that I'll make it. But the moment I sat in the exam, I mean, I would say I was literally routed, and I realized, I mean, it's a different ball game altogether. And then next year you become conscious
Yeah.
that because in UPC you never cram these figures. Say India will grow by X percent, or what is the growth in exports in this sector, how much money is allocated to a different sector. I think you'll never do this. And this exam is specifically designed in a way where they ask you a lot of figure based questions, and they'll continue to ask that at least in the first phase.
Right. And did you prefer making your own notes, or you used to read or go through the PDFs that are available online?
I think I never made notes for this part, because I think that'll take a lot of time, and that time you can actually go through the PDF once more, and
Okay.
then maybe three times, and in the same amount of time. So one, I was working, so I never had this much time to make notes. At least for the first section, I mean the first part, prelims exam, I never made notes. I just made it a point that if I'll have extra time, I'll go through it once more, but I'll never make notes. I did make notes for the subjective section and then the second part, and I'll discuss that and in the course of our conversation as well. But I never made notes for the prelims. I mean, just read it again and again. Don't even, but I mean, learn it. You'll never be able to learn it, but just read it again and again.
Yeah, so that even if you find that similar data in the option, you can have a good
Yeah,
guess.
you can make a sense of it, and then you can get the question right.
Yeah. So one more important question that most of the aspirants they want to know, that how much month cover current affairs should they cover. So what do you think, that what is the requirement for NABARD?
So I think if you do it for 4 months is mandatory, five is good, nothing like six, I would say.
All
And
right.
of course, I mean, there will be questions which are like 1 year old, but I think that should not perturb any aspirant and get into a race of covering as many months as you can. I mean, you can always go back 5 years and do it, but there is no returns to it. I think if you've done it for 6 months prior to the exam, you are pretty much comfortable.
Right. Because you can skip 2 to 3 questions if even if they're asked 1 year
I mean,
back.
at the end of the day, you need to get 65% marks, and you'll be through.
All right. So this was for the phase one. And one more thing I want to ask, that did you do your preparation along with the job, or you took a break from it?
No, I never took a break. I mean, it's just that I would get up early in the morning, do whatever I could manage, and then if there's a time to spare towards the end of the day, I would do it then. But never took a conscious break. I think I would utilize my weekends more judiciously instead of taking a break.
Right. So that's also an achievement, clearing examination along with the job, because usually the working candidates they have to study along with the work, and they have to compete with the students who are giving full time to the examination. So that's really inspiring, and this would really motivate most of the working candidates to pursue their goals. So this was about phase one. Now let's move to the phase two. And herein, one question was there from ARD for the generalist vacancies, and that was a compulsory question. So, what was your, because someone who is not from agriculture background and they just looked at that 15 marker question, it is directly from the agriculture. So, what was your reaction? And then again, how did you tackle it?
So yeah, I mean, ARD can be unsettling for many aspirants, and like you mentioned, there is one question which is compulsory, and then you can pick and choose the second question. So the compulsory question you have to, and I think it was crossbreeding this time.
Yeah.
So that kind of unsettled a lot of aspirants. But if you've been reading, if you've been reading regularly, I think crossbreeding is one area in ARD which has always been in debate. I mean, for the kind of ecological imbalance it can bring in, or maybe the technological advancement related to it. Of course, I mean, crossbreeding till now has done us more good than harm, but there are other sides of it as well. And this is one debated topic. And then there was one news, I think last year, where first buffalo was made,
Yeah.
the bunny buffalo or something like that.
Yeah. Bunny
I think
Buffalo.
that was first time I read something about crossbreeding. Didn't know exactly what to write in that question, but I still managed 500 words with the attached knowledge. I mean, I had about crossbreeding. So
Yeah.
they didn't write it to the T, but the fact that everybody else knew so little about it, I think that worked in my favor.
So there are two things that I want to know about descriptive for our aspirants who are watching right now. First of all, is that whatever questions were there, so you frame the answer that you framed. Were they the combination of static or and current affairs, or were they more of the static portion or current affairs? Like how did you made that?
Okay, so I think framing an answer is as important as knowing it. I mean, and when you frame an answer, there are, like I always say, there are 15, 20 big themes in agriculture, and you can pick them always. So if I used to pick a theme in agriculture today, I think MSP. The entire debate in last 1 year has been about MSP. I mean,
Yeah.
farmers claiming that we want MSP for 22 crops. The government, of course, do not have the wherewithal to kind of assure it. But again, how this political spectrum works is we go back and forth on this. So MSP has always been in debate. Second is farmer income, how to double farmer income. I think that's been in debate for 5 years now, and we should have done it by 2022. And I think we're nowhere close to doing it. Then farmer suicides, farmer debt. Where is farm income coming from? What is the composition of rural economy? I think these are big 10, 12 themes. And once you pick these themes, and these are the kind of notes you should make, not notes something like say IMF said India will grow by 8%. You might as well read it on the internet, right? Instead of writing that one line in your copy. I mean, the better thing to do will be you pick these 15 to 20 broad themes and see how these topics have evolved over a course of time. So if I say MSP from its inception, from the era of green revolution to how is it placed today and how does the future look like, I think if you read MSP from that angle, you are better placed to write your answers in a very holistic manner. So I think pick broad 15 to 20 themes in agriculture, make 2 to 3 or 4 pages of notes on all of these, and quality notes, so that any topic, or even if somebody is asking you very granular topic inside MSP, you are able to answer it. I mean, you should have 400 words for everything, and then even if you have to create 600 words, I think you can build a story around it and write a very holistic answer on that. So that has been my approach, and I've been doing it for not only agriculture but the entire economics as such, the macroeconomics. So I've
Right.
been doing it for those.
Right. So you suggest to the aspirant that you can go for the broader topics that are burning issues in the nation, which
Yeah.
are related to that particular subject, and then you can have you can write your answers accordingly, because more or less the question would be asked in such things only.
Yeah, I mean, they can be peripheral topics. I mean, what else would an examiner ask you in agriculture? I mean, if you're doing these 20 themes and you are covering it in so depth that you are even covering the peripheral topics related to it, I think you're fairly covered for the examination. And with subjective weightage increasing, which is good, I think,
Right.
because cramming 5 different PDFs and the figures, I think people have been doing it in the past. Uh, but I mean, you can have other opinions on that as well, and the jury is still out. But I think that's not the correct way to judge somebody. And with subjective paper, even if they make it 100 on 100 subjective, I think that's what UPSC also does, right?
Yeah.
You can judge the candidate better.
Yeah. And what about the static portion, like the syllabus that is given by NABARD in their notification? So, did you go through that also, or you solely relied on the burning issues?
I think that can be misleading to say the amount of syllabus that is mentioned on the static side. I think that can be misleading for many candidates, and how the examination is structured currently. And I mean, neither do I, nor do you know how it will be next year. But if we see the trend in last 2 3 years, I think it has been more heavy on the dynamic side. So static, even if somebody is completely ignoring static, of course, if you don't have static knowledge, you can't build on dynamic part. So you just need to have a basic of static, and focus should, I think if you were to divide it into percentage, 70-30 on 70 on dynamic, 30 on static, you can ignore static and still clear the exam. So I think dynamic and what's happening in the last 1.5 2 years, something that has been in debate, is much important than the static part. And accordingly, one should divide his time between static and dynamic.
Yes, even when we are preparing for the dynamic part, in some static portion it comes along our
Yeah,
way, we
that's
study about
that's
it.
what that's what I said. No, even if you pick MSP, you're not going to do MSP for last 1 year, right?
Yeah.
You'll see the entire history of MSP, and then you're any which way is covering the static part.
True. And now, what about framing the answers? So, what was your strategy, that going with the intro and then body and conclusion, or did you prefer the paragraph means the pointers?
I think I've used a mix of it. So while you are, I think 600 words look too much, but once you start to write it, you might as well realize that 600 words are just not enough to do justice to a topic as big as MSP.
Yeah.
So I think you can use a mix of points and paragraphs. Of course, in 600 words, you have that freedom to use 100 words for intro, the
Yeah.
last 100 words for the conclusion. But I think in between 400 words in body, you should definitely go with points. I think that makes it more presentable and easier for the examiner to, I mean, let the examiner know that, yeah, I know the stuff.
Yeah. So, because it's an online examination, so can we bold words in
No,
the
I think that's
descriptive?
not the option in the current user interface we have for the
Yeah.
examination. I think you cannot use bold italics or something. If it would have been there, I think people would have made good use of it. But as of now, it's not there. You just have to write it plain. You can, if you were to highlight something, I think you can use caps and write it in caps.
Caps.
That's one way of highlighting something that you want to
Yeah.
highlight.
But then you can write point wise, like point
Yeah,
one, and
you can write.
yeah, you
You can
can do
always
that.
write one. Yeah.
And yeah, and then anything like backspace you can do, and rest you can do. Just you cannot highlight and bold or
Yeah, I
italic
mean,
something.
interface has been debatable. I think I wrote the entire exam. I had 20 minutes to spare, and then took that entire 20 minutes to structure it, because you're typing fast. You don't know
Yeah.
where you're going. Then when you come back and realize, oh, this should have been in the next line. So you need to do that phrasing and paraphrasing. I think that that'll take 10 to 15 minutes towards the end. If you do it good, otherwise, I think you should at least have some time in the end to proofread your
Check.
answers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and what about the, how did you manage the typing? So, did you used to do practice for this, or you were good at it?
No, no, I'm generally good at typing because I mean, as we usually do, I've been working for 5 years now. So, but always typing on laptop and typing on keyboard is a different game altogether.
True.
So, keyboard can actually jeopardize your speed. So you need to be very particular about typing on keyboard. I haven't consciously done it, but somehow I managed it. But again, if you're used to typing on laptop and then typing 2000 words using a keyboard that these centers do provide, I think it can be a daunting task. But if you practice it, I think you are well placed.
Right. So there is a difference while writing on a laptop
Correct.
and then on a keyboard. Right.
Correct.
So the students who are not familiar with it, they should even practice all the subjective answers that they are doing, making notes, everything on in this computer only, so that they have practice for that also.
Correct. And
Yeah.
in computer, use a keyboard instead of your laptop keyboard. I mean, use a separate keyboard.
Right. So this was for the phase two of it, and yeah, one more thing, that was English subject for phase two also. So for phase one, you said that you didn't prepare much for that, but for phase two, did you prepare anything, or what was your way to approach it?
So I think phase two English is pretty much defined well. I mean, you'll get one letter, you'll get one précis, or and you'll get one essay. Now, letter, if you know the formats, you're good to go. I mean, just be thorough with the formats of formal, informal, or friendly letter. How these letters are written, you should be very particular about formats, because if formats go wrong, I think you'll lose some marks there. Right, and Prezi is always easy. I think you need not specifically practice Prezi, but if you're good with vocab, I think you'll be able to sum it up well in one third of the length. But the daunting task can be essay, and in essay you get 400 to 500 words, I guess. But to structure it, I think you need to practice some essays.
Yeah.
Pick a topic. I mean, generally, pick a topic for which you know a lot, and then try and summing it up in 400 words. I think this is the challenge. And hence, I did practice some essays. I mean, some very broad economic issues. Just try and write them in 400 words and see how much justice you can do to the topic. And if you do that, I think you'll be well placed in the final exams.
So did you put much of that data on your English topics also, which were burning issues?
I think this time in English paper there was one essay on which was very much related to HR. I mean that's my field. I'm an
All
HR
right.
professional, so there was one topic on diversity at workplace. I did use two data points, one from the recent report from IMF, and one, of course, how the corporate workforce is structured. So these data points I had handy in my mind. Of course, never prepared for this topic, but diversity is something we've been actively working on as HR professionals. I mean, and that has been one topic which is at the focus of most of the organizations today. So I think I was lucky to get that topic. But yeah, in English, you invariably get one topic from economics where you can always put data points, and data points do tell to the examiner that yes, I know the topic and I know it inside out. So
Yeah.
it's always good to use, but it should not be data heavy. It's not
Yeah.
that you're using 10 different data points. I think one or two is perfectly fine.
Yeah. So, sir, to the point which you just said, I have one doubt which most aspirant they might do mistake. Is that, for example, you get one topic which is similar to your field. So, if a candidate he gets a topic which is very similar to him or his surrounding, so should he use the personal experiences also in that particular essay or any question, or it should be generic only?
No, I mean, particular examples which can strengthen the viewpoint that you have already expressed
Yeah.
is always good.
Yeah.
And if you can substantiate it with your personal experience with the data point, I think this is always helpful. That kind
Yeah.
of strengthens your thought process.
Yeah. But like,
Because English, no, as much as you realize it, English is more about how the answer is structured. Of course, they're not checking your knowledge of pure economics or subject knowledge in economics. I think it's more of a test of how well you can draft. And I think drafting is one work these guys extensively do when they're recruited. So that's fair enough to test an individual on drafting skills. So English is more of a test of drafting skills.
right. So, so this was about the second phase, and now let's come to the interview section. So you had already faced it before, and so what was the difference in the uh, mm, mm, what we can say? Uh, so were the panel cordial this time, or they were a kind of harsh because this was your second attempt, or what was it like?
No, I think my interview, and this is my personal experience, my last interview was very good. I mean, of course, panel, both the times they were very cordial. They never, I mean, it's not a stress interview. And being an HR professional, I've been on the other side of the table for most part of my career. So
Yeah,
I've been taking interviews, and I have always loved to be interviewed. So interview is something I'm not at all perturbed with, and I think I love being interviewed. And my last interview was really good. I got 25 on 25 last year as well. I'm expecting good marks this time as well. But again, the interview panelists are always cordial. Even if you don't know an answer, I think they will quickly switch to a topic which makes you comfortable. So it's not that they will grill you all the time, but they might as well. And in interview, it's always good to be honest with your answers. Even if you have a different thought process, you should be very honest about telling that thought process, and that might be completely different from what NABARD is doing. It happened with me this time, but then the chairman asked me to prove it, and we did as well. And then he said that maybe we need to rework on our hypothesis because I was assuming that this is true.
yeah,
That is a double-edged sword. I mean, it can actually work against as you as well,
yeah,
because somebody might take it on ego. Oh, I've been researching on this subject for 20 years, and this is newbie on the board, and he's telling me what to do. But I think if you're humble and just straightforward, I think it works. But again, interview marks are not out. I would love to see how much I've got an interview about. I mean, apart from anything else. This.
yeah. It's okay to disagree, and because especially you gave some points which were but for the betterment of the organization also, so that's fine.
Correct.
Like we can't
Correct.
give this aspirant should not give just any answer just for the sake of proving their point. It should be
Yeah, I mean, you
logical.
should not always toe the line because NABARD is doing something with a thought process in mind, and of course, it's a big organization. Uh, there are number of talented individuals out there who are kind of designing policies and stuff. So you cannot always question them because there's a lot of brain that has already gone behind designing it. But yeah, even if you have some thoughts to the contrary, you should definitely place it.
Yeah. And did they ask you questions from your educational background also, or the work that you are doing?
Yeah, they did. I mean, and they'll largely touch on the recent part. So because I'm an engineer
Yeah.
and I'm a civil engineer, then I did my HR. So they asked me question that how can we use your skills in the new role, in the role you would be doing. So I think this is one standard question they ask everybody. How can we use
Yeah.
your XYZ skill? So if you're an electrical engineer, how can we use your skill for the betterment of the organization? So I think this is one question invariably everybody should prepare for.
Right. And they did they ask you some personal questions as well, or were the questions just on technical lines only?
No, I think technical was very specific part of it. Maybe you can say 15 to 20% of it. The rest was what is NABARD doing in your area? How do you associate with the rural economy? What have been your linkages to the? Because see, most of the aspirants when they come to the interview, they say, "I want to work for the betterment of the society,"
Yeah.
or maybe this is how NABARD attracts me. So they'll ask question, no, what is your link to NABARD? I mean, have you ever had an interface with NABARD? What is NABARD doing specifically in your area, or is there a specific scheme that runs in your area? So I think these are the questions NABARD will always ask, and this is the side of the interview which will be pretty heavy, because it'll take 50% of your time. Interview is not so long; it's just 25 minutes, and I think 15 minutes they will devote specifically to you and NABARD, and how well do you interact with NABARD.
Yeah. So because you are aspiring to be in that organization, so you should be aware of that, whatever the
Yeah,
things that organization do, right?
and you should also be aware of the fact that how can you add value to the organization. So how can your expertise be used for NABARD's betterment?
True. You should have that analytical view of the things.
Correct.
Yeah. So that was it about this particular interview. So Mr. Puneet, he gave some really good insights on how to crack the examination. So for phase one, he says that for non-merit section or for the qualifying section, the thing that students need to do is just have a overview of everything. For the people who are not good at quant and reasoning, they should definitely go for mock test. Otherwise, in that section, you just have to qualify the minimum cutoff that the organization will have. For the merit section for ESI and GA and ARD, he says that which strategy he followed, he did not made notes, but what he did, he kept on revising, and he says there's no need to mug up all the data, and you cannot also, but just keep on revising that, so that in examination, even if you don't exactly remember the answer, you can just go for a good guess for it. And for phase two, he says the best strategy of it is to be aware of the burning issues that are associated with this subject for past 1 to 2 years in the nation, that is going on around India, because that is what asked. It can be asked in static form, it can be asked in the dynamic form, but you should be aware of that. And for English also, he had the same strategy. And for interview, he says two things. First of all, you should be very thorough with the organization, because you are aspiring to be there, so you should be aware of that, whatever things that organization is doing, and also how can you add value to it, right? So have I missed anything, sir?
No, I think that fairly covers everything, but just it's important to be honest as well in the interview.
Right, so don't
And
yeah,
one suggestion, I think you should not be perturbed by the vacancies that are released, because most of the candidates say, "Oh, there are only 30 around. How can I make it?" I think if you think that way, you'll definitely not make it. But
exactly.
if you keep on clearing these stages, and you see at the end it becomes easy, and then you cannot always predict as well. I mean, you can give a really decent interview, but still you might be lacking in mains. But that should nowhere deter you from taking the exam again. And if you really want to go for it, I think 2 3 tries is something you can always take.
Right, exactly. As Mr. Puneet, he himself has faced. He was along with the job. He was preparing for examination. He appeared. This was his third time when he cleared NABARD. He did not kept his morale down. It you can feel sad for 1 day or two, but it always about getting up again. So, sir, is there something you want to say to the aspirants who are preparing for NABARD?
I think the best part would be to keep it very simple. Just don't go too much into the nitty gritties of the syllabus. I think what's around you is what will be asked. And if you get into the nitty gritties of the syllabus, I think you'll take a lot of time to just analyze it. And these exams just don't give you too much time, right? I
True.
mean, the phase one result is out in 20, 25, 30 days. Sometimes it might take more, but that is what the usual timeline is. And
Yeah.
then mains, I mean, they don't give you much time. So if you try to analyze the syllabus, create your own very extensive strategy, I think that doesn't work. Be on the periphery, know everything. Be a very generalist kind of a person, that you know something about everything, because you don't know what will be asked, and you should not be blank about anything. So I think that's it's good to have broad view of things, but it's not always good to research something deeply.
True. It's more about smart work than hard work.
I mean, that's true, and you can be normal. I mean, you just need not research something very deeply. I think you, even if you touch it at the periphery, you'll have something to answer, and that works.
True. So, thank you everyone for watching the session, and I hope most of your doubts they must have been cleared, and it would be definitely boosting for the working candidates who are aspiring to join NABARD. And that is all for today. And thank you so much, sir, for having an interview with us. And it was really enlightening. Thank you.
Thank you.